Yes, now it has started to record. Thank you very much for reminding it. Yeah, I'll repeat for another one time. So I would urge you to learn about application security. The reason is actually the demand that we have. If you are if you are an academic, of course you have an added advantage. As if you are a professional who is dealing in software development, you might be a network professional, right? So still you have an added advantage where you can add application security as a skill to your CV. So then you are going to be highlighted among others, right? Trust me that you are not going to waste your time on these two sessions. Fine. Now I just wanted you to look at some of the statistical data that I could capture and bring to your consideration. So in application layer, we have different levels or different criticalities to deal with, right? The colors indicate itself so that you can read it. We know that red color usually has to stop us, right? If you are in a project, if you find something in red, that indicates us to stop what we are doing and to pay attention, right? Yes, of course, in application security, 17.3 seems to be at highest risk, right? So in 2021, this might be more than that. The data being captured is not like in 2021. So a year back, we captured the data. So we usually get the data at end of the year. So we will be able to get recent data in end of the 2021. But for the moment, just for reference, we should understand that there is a huge risk involved. And of course, there is another level of risk, like if you think of a critical risk, 2.7% of a critical risk seems to be involving in application layer. Now, if you are a network admin, you might have seen different layers, right? The layers that we have are like the physical data link, data layer link, and the network layer, session, presentation, application. So these are the 7 layers which we are discussing. Usually at application layer, if we have vulnerabilities or if we have enough vulnerabilities open, so then your effort towards hardening other layers are not going to help, right? So if we have network admins or people who are working in administrative domain, I'll allow you to talk within like 10-15 times so that you also can share experiences with us, and you can ask questions from me so that I can share my experiences, and then we can have a good discussion. Now, moving forward, you can refer to these statistics since these are not very difficult to understand. Now, there are a few terms that you need to look at, right? So, one thing that I would love to see is like client-side security, right? So you might have heard this term called cross-site scripting, right? In shortened terms, that is called XSS. If you haven't heard it before, don't worry. I'm going to explain it within the session. And cross-domain related matters. So these are certain things that we use to come across when software development happens. If you are not a software developer, or else if you are not in the domain of software development, don't worry. But for the moment, keep this in mind. 24% of client-side security, client-side related security should be considered, right? So that's the portion which we can find. It's of course a problem, right? Out of 100, you should think of client-side security. As a percentage, 24% is that. And 29% insecure configuration and insecure deployment. Now, if you are working towards the domain of deploying applications, you might not be a software developer, but you will be helping software developer to or developers to deploy applications in production, right? So if you don't understand, please raise your hand. I'll help you to understand. And in insecure configurations, whenever somebody or a team has developed an application and they are going to put it into production, somebody has to configure, right? Somebody somehow has to configure. So for that case, what we can do is actually we need to think of how to configure without allowing someone else to uh, enter to the system and to destroy our objective, right? So in simple terms, how to secure your configurations. And yes, 3% actually related to the exposed interfaces. So consoles, right? So you might have seen consoles, but in many cases, system administrators make sure to securely configure consoles so that the others can't access. Might be firewall rules, might be security hardenings, right? And 1%, yes, of course, denial of service attacks. We know that there is called DOS attack, but nowadays it seems to be managed well with firewall rules and all. And 5% authorization weaknesses, not authentication. This is about authorization. You might have seen certain terms like privilege related attacks, right? So I would not be referring to the exact technical term so that everybody can understand. So privilege matters, right? One of the examples that I can give you, let's say we used to use Moodle today. You might be a student in Moodle, so you will be logging into the system as a student. But what someone else get your credentials and convert it to administrative access, right? So someone else has used your account to log into the system, and he or the person who has tried to log into the system has converted himself to an administrator and tried to use admin functionalities. And admin can delete you, right? Admin can delete users, admin can delete courses in an LMS like Moodle, admin can upload content, right? Admin can enroll students, they can modify it. That is something related to authorization. So if you have given freedom for someone to uh, change the authorization easily, right? That's going to be a problem. The impact seems to be 5% as per the record. Now the authentication weaknesses. In simple terms, there are different policies, right? That is of course a headache for us. We know that if you are working for an organization, your organization will be asking you to change your password frequently. Windows password, we should know that, right? So if you've been working for an organization, might be like for every 3 months they're asking us to change the password, and it has to be a complex one, right? You can't remember it. You have to note it down somewhere. It's a problem. We know that. But that is called a password policy, right? The password policies can be added to the systems by administrators so that they can be, they will be beneficial. So then attacks can be prevented. Still, 6% of authentication weakness seems to be existing, and 20% of information leakages, right? So we know that sensitive data of you and mine exist in systems. If you consider an LMS, your personal data is there, my personal data is there. And if we forget about the data that we have in an LMS, we know that our data related to banking details like account and the matters that you have in your personal loans, right? Those stuffs are available in your banking systems, right? Those are much more sensitive than what we discussed now. So the sensitive information related to finance is at a highest risk, right? If you have information in banking systems, if you have information in any organization related to banking and finance, you have sort of you should be having sort of a consideration whether my information is secure. So 20% out of the entire 100 seems to be in leakage of information, and 12% seems to be injection ahead. So I won't be taking much time to just to stay time. So then if we look at further, now I want you to read this and try to understand. We'll give you like 1 or 2 minutes just to read the slide and try to understand what we try to highlight here, right? Spend like 1 2 minutes and try to understand why it is important to look at. fine. I think you can get it easily. Now, if you go through it, that indicates uh, cost, cost matters, right? We know that in everyday life, we think of cost, how we are going to utilize the income that we have, right? If you are a manager, cost is something that you really care about. And we know that as employees, managers used to try to cut everything, right? They try to utilize it. I don't know. Might be to utilize it. Might be to cut the cost. There are different terms, and there are differences between utilizing the cost and cutting the cost. But we have seen that in our context, people like to cut the cost, right? And cost-related matters and the importance of fixing defects at early stages of software development. You can see here, right? Cost of fixing vulnerabilities early seems to be, right? Is it higher or lower? That is lower, right? So cost of fixing vulnerabilities earlier is lower than cost of fixing them at late. Now you can see the numbers, right? In dollars, the difference is huge. So if you are working in a software development domain, or if you are a manager, or else if you are a senior person or a junior person or a intermediate level of experienced person, you should understand that if you are not looking towards finding vulnerabilities at higher stages, then how we find it? Your testing team has to find it, right? So I'll explain this again for the academics that we have. If you are from academic background, in software development life cycle, whenever we develop the software and we put it into testing, that's how the typical life cycle goes. Now, we know that everything has a cost. Quality assurance or testing has a cost involved in it. Now, the importance to understand here is the amount of cost that you are going to utilize for utilize for software development and for testing. Now, if you compare these two, right? So, if you have software development at a cost of X, and there is a cost of Y for quality assurance as well. But we try to minimize the cost. Now, if you have to spend a huge cost for testing, it's a burden. You have to sell your product and you have to get something in return, and you should try to manage the profit as well. Then what happens if you really don't have thought of identifying vulnerabilities at the early stages? Each and every bugs related to source code related matters, design related matters will contribute to a huge problem. Now you might have seen the compliance, especially people who are working in industry might have heard the term compliance. But for academics, compliance is a term that we really care about. That has a tight relationship with auditing as well. So when it comes to information or IT industry, we develop softwares and we deploy it in live systems, but there are standards to be followed. If we don't have standards followed, then there are governing bodies who are going to audit the systems and find faults on that, and they actually will not allow us to put them into production. Right now, I'll give you an example. In banking and finance sector, if you are developing a software, there are governing bodies. Right? Specifically in Sri Lanka, we have central bank. If you are developing a software, right, and if you are going to put it into production, if you are going to contribute to transactions, then definitely you have to read standards given by the central bank and you have to align it to that. So that is something related to compliance, right? For that, there is a cost. But anyway, other than the compliance and all, the cost that you are going to spend at last is going to be higher if you could not identify them at early stages. So you have tried to develop a software and you have delivered it, but there are a lot of issues related to security. Now it's not the time for you to fix it. You can fix them, but you again have to go back to the design levels. You again have to go back to what you call the development levels. You will have to pay for engineers again, right? You will have to pay for the designers again. You might not be able to see it at once, but in an organization, hours count. Right? So it's very important for you to look at early stages of software development. as an academic and also as an industry oriented person. Now we look at the definitions. So you don't have to worry about the definitions much, but I will anyway bring you through the same. Now it's of course a life cycle. So the term being replaced, earlier it was software development life cycle. Now it seems to be a security development life cycle. If you look at the history of it, the person who invented the Microsoft story seems to be the person who has started the story. Now Bill Gates seems to be the one who has highlighted the importance of having such a practice, or in simple terms, security development life cycle within software development process. And that actually reduce software maintenance cost, and of course it increases the reliability of software related matters, specifically the bugs. So you can have a good sleep if you are into the software development domain. We know that you might receive a call at any night to disturb your sleep, so that you can sleep well. Right? It's a good thing that you to practice. Now, this is how it came to the practice. In early stages of 2002 or 2003, they just have drafted the requirement. They have tried to apply the same practices with Windows Server versions. And then actually their senior leadership was working towards implementing a better practice. And now it has a very organized practice. Now the standard practice seems to be organized, and it seems to be a well-established one. Now it's publicly available for you and to me to learn it and to practice in simple terms, to apply in whenever or wherever the domain that we used to use. Now the involvement, all engineers of software domains or security experts, the terminology just to understand it. So IETF, I think you already know it, that is Internet Engineering Task Force. But for academic, this is much more important if you are the lecturer or a teacher, so that you also can highlight the importance to your students. Right. Now, who you should, the who aspect, right? Why we should think of it right now? The people who should think of the aspect of software security. Yes, hackers might use the vulnerabilities, right? That will be a threat against your software systems. We know that as an engineer, you will not be able to think in the same way. We don't have that psychology to think as a hacker. And you can start mitigating threats, of course, but that sometimes will not help you. You have to have a practice. What is actually a repeatable process? You can do this not just a single time. This is going to be a life cycle where you're going to introduce. Once you have applied the practice, like I'll explain the step, you can design it and you can evaluate it. If you are not satisfied with your design, you can go back to the design and then you can evaluate it. So it's going to be a life cycle. That will help you, right? Now, when to start? Make sure to start it at early stages of the development. Make sure to plan it, and you will be having different team members. So you need to contribute, you need the contribution of software developers, senior software engineers, software architects, tech leads, right? And also you need the contribution from network related people like network engineers, DevOps engineers if you have, right? Sometimes system support engineers, right? And related professional support is really important, right? If you think of software development or the secure software development cycle is only for software people, it's not the case. You need the support from others like network specialists or the network experts. Sometimes you might have to go for a expert in security related to the network. You have to talk to the guy and get his advices. Right? The system will give you vulnerabilities, but will not give you the fixes. That's the biggest part of the headache that you have. Whenever we've just completed the session, you will be able to find out bugs of systems, or you'll be able to find the vulnerabilities, but you will not be having solutions in your hand. For that, you definitely have to go for a meeting with other professionals and get their recommendations. Now, why? We already know that. I'll not be wasting your time. We know the why aspect to learning. Now, we'll actually look at sample threat model here. You don't have to be confused. Now, the prerequisite to go through this session is actually about if you have skills of drawing DSP diagrams, that is sufficient. But in any case, if you don't remember the practices of DFT diagramming, you can refer to your previous lectures or academic materials. In simple terms, you should know what is DFT, but symbols will be differ in this case, right? The symbols will be differ, but there is nothing that you can learn you don't have to spend many hours to learn this. You just have to go back and just read few papers about DFT. So that will help you to come back and try to practice. So simple things, if I try to remind you, you should know what is an external entity, right? In simple terms, you know that there is something called external entity in a DFT diagram, and you should know what is the process, and you should know what the data store. We know that arrow is there just to showcase to what direction data is going, right? So few things to know. You should know what is an external entity. You should know what is the process, and you should know what the data store, and then you should know what are these arrows. And there are a few other things that you need to remind. You should have a rough understanding of what is a context diagram, level 1 and level 2. In DFT diagramming, we have something called context level. In simple terms, level 0 and level 1 and level 2. The difference between the levels are much more enough for you to go through the session, right? So you can unmute and ask questions if you have. So I'll be here for another 2-3 minutes. You can ask questions. If any of you are having questions, you can unmute and ask. No questions. Then shall I ask questions? So I'll be asking few questions just to get to know you. I'm very sorry that if I mispronounce any of your names, I beg your pardon for the same. I think all of you can hear me. So I'll start from the list since this is going to be interactive session. Uh, Jayasuri, can you hear me? I'm actually looking at the last part of the list. Hello, Jayasuri. Can you hear me? Okay. Uh, Mr. Rukshan. Okay. Um, Erandi. Yes, Erandi. My question is actually you can ask questions, right? Of course, I just want to get to know your understanding about DFT. Erandi, you can unmute and talk. So I just want to know from which domain you are. So you can tell us whether you are belonging to industry or you are from academic and your experience about DFT. Erandi can unmute and talk.
So actually, I was working at the software engineer previously. Now I'm not working at that industry anymore.
Okay.
But we have done a couple of things, the exercise that regarding to the DFT in previous semester. We have experience in DFT.
Right. Thank you. Thank you very much, Erandi. So much appreciated your comment. So Iranti, in coming sessions, you always can ask questions. So if anything is not clear to you, you unmute and ask. Okay. Fine. Right. So we'll pick a few others. Yes. We'll go ahead with the list. Uh, I'm not very sure. I'll just pronounce it. Is it Mr. Disanayak? Hello, Disanayak. Can you hear me?
Yes, I have a basic knowledge
You have basic understanding, right? Easy?
Yeah, I have a idea about
Okay, good. Thanks. So if you have any doubts while I conduct the session, please ask questions. Okay, fine, good. Now, few others. Yes, Tenwar. Uh, Tenwar, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yes, Tenwar. I just wanted to know your background and your exposure to DFT.
Yes, I am working as a UI engineer in
Okay,
software engineering background I have.
okay,
Yes, I have done some of the things in DFT
okay,
as well as the previous semesters.
okay. That's good. Right. So, thank you very much.
Yes,
I believe that. Okay, fine. Thank you very much for your response, Tenwar. And again, I believe that many of the academics might know this stuff, but I worry that the theoretical part of DFD might not be that like we very rarely deal with DFTs in industry in some cases, but specifically BS and others usually deal with that. But I worry about developers. Since I've been a developer, we know that we don't used to use DFDs much. But other diagrams, of course, like sequence, we used to use them. I'll ask only from another one or two. Yes, Harshani, can you hear me?
Yeah, hi, sir. So
Hi.
I currently work as a senior software engineer in one of the software engineering companies, and I also do a bit of visiting lecturing.
Very
And
good.
about my experience on DFTs, we, as many others said, we have covered designing module in the last semester, in the first semester.
Great.
So, so we have a basic understanding as to the DFTs. Yes.
Very good. Right. Thank you very much. So the diagrams will be a bit differ in this case. So that's the only difference which you see. So standard, we know that in DFTs we have different standards, but Microsoft has given a set of symbols for you. You just have to follow the symbols, and the same theoretical aspects will be there. Additionally, I'll be adding some stuff that you need to know about the tools and all, so you can go ahead without the problem, right? Okay, I think we are good to go ahead. Now, what I want you to look at is there is a model called STRIDE. That is in simple terms, people used to call it like stride per element. In simple terms, you can think of an approach for threat modeling, right? So for anything, there should be an approach or a method of accessing. So for threat modeling, there are different approaches. What we used to practice is STRIDE, but if you search in internet, you will find plenty of resources for additional methods or additional approaches as well. But here what we are practicing is called STRIDE, right? Keep that in mind. But still, the basic framework is similar, right? The abstract of these practices like STRIDE and the other ways of approaching are not much differ. There is a little difference between these different. Actually, Microsoft has introduced two methods. One is STRID, and there's another one method we are not going to discuss today. So if you have questions, you can ask. But for the moment, we'll be focusing on what is STRID. Now, I'll explain the process that you need to think of. The simplest way to think of this is actually, so we need to design a diagram, and then we should find threat. In simple terms, that is to identify threat, and then we focus on mitigating, and then we validate it. That's why I told you that this is going to be a cycle, right? You can think of diagramming, and then you can go for the steps of identifying threats, and then try to mitigate issues and validating. But trust me, mitigation will not be able to be done by a single person, right? So whenever you find threats in your systems, the threat will not be to a single direction. There will be multiple threats. So in some cases you will not be the person who is having the expertise. So for that, I'll explain the process. And if you are a capable person of changing processes and changing your way of doing things, it's the ideal time for you to implement and see. Right. Now we are going to design, and then we are going to identify threats and then to mitigate and evaluate. So that's the simple way. Now designing is actually, of course, about DFD or data flow diagrams. And whenever actually you want to change stuff, you have to update the diagrams, right? It's like your customer's requirement today might be differ tomorrow, right? So we know that in industry, we don't like keep customers for a longer period of time without delivering their requirements. Business changes and the customer requirement changes. So in the same way, like when the software maintenance cycle, when you are in the maintenance levels of the software, if you have delivered it, you can maintain a diagram, but for coming requirement, specifically for change requests and all, you have to deal with them. Then you have to come up with a new version of the diagram and update it and keep it. Make sure to save versions so that you have specific versions and the reasons that you have given for the given the mitigation. And yes, you can enumerate the assumptions and the dependencies. Yes, of course, you can number and keep the version. Right. Now, just for everybody to refresh your mind, these are the symbols that you are going to deal here. This is the symbol for external entity. So external entity is something external to the system that can be people, other systems, in simple terms, Microsoft, right? So if you are engaging with Microsoft, of course, that this diagram has not been drawn by me, given by Microsoft. I just kept it as it is, so that you can have an external entity, might be people, might be other systems. The process, yes, of course, you can think of any process, but you will be limited for some processes here. But you should understand that if you are dealing with some other technologies like Java and all, you can think of your processes, right? Your way of dealing with things. Here they have just given what we have in .NET frameworks, like they have given DLLs, EXEs, COM object component. But if you are familiar with Java and all, your executions or your execution files will not be the EXEs, might be Jar files, might be WAR or WO files, right? Don't worry, the same processes can be applied. So even though you are a Java related developer, you can use the same process. The terms will only be different, right? Data flow is a typical flow. So if you have a function call, you might know what is a function call. You may be calling to a different functions of another instance, right? So then that also will be kept in the data flow. Network traffic. So if the data is going to be transferred from an object to another object through the network, you can have a data flow. So for that, you can use the arrow. And remote procedure calls, I think you are aware of remote procedure calls if you are into industry. If not the case, remote procedure calls are actually going to be remote calls that you are going to deal with. Give me a second. Fine. Sorry for the disturbance. Yeah, we are back. Now we were actually talking about the remote procedure calls. So RPC calls, if you are not from industry, you will feel a bit confused, but don't worry. Remote procedure calls are actually to call another system. Let's say in simple terms, to call another system or to call another functionality. Somewhere we don't have in your scope, but you are going to access some other scope and get your job done, right? Okay. Now data stores, in simple terms, that might be a database, might be a flat file to store data, might be a registry like in Windows, might be a shared memory, maybe queue or stack. Queues or stack, in simple terms, that might be an array, right? In programmatical way, that might be an array where you can store sort of a data, can be a data store, right? Now the trust boundary was not there in your typical DFT diagramming. Here there is something called trust boundary. The trust boundary will help us to get to know the boundary of your system, right? Now, you should be clear on this aspect. Trust boundary can be applied to the entire system in some cases, but if you have a specific requirement to find a part of, not to scan the entire system and just to look at part of it, right? You may be having a very lengthy diagram, or a very huge diagram. You just have to focus on part of it. Yes, what you can do is you can add a trust boundary to part of the diagram and can try to segregate the issue related to that area, right? So you don't have to worry about the entire system at once. And of course, trust boundary can be related to the file system. I think that's clear, right? And yes, specifically, I have kept a slide for you to read about trust boundaries. Yes, adding trust boundary that intersect the data flow. So we know that data used to go through flows. If you want to intersect any particular data flow and try to identify the issues related to the flow, you can use the trust boundary. Yes, of course, if you are a developer, you can think of certain API calls, right, integrations, like stuff. So otherwise, you can think of different connectivities. Right. Now, this is how the diagram iteration is going to happen, right? So I told you that the diagram should be just completed at once. You can go through different levels. So it should be an iterative process. You can draw one and then go to a discussion and then come back. So how to know it? Actually, you need to go for a breakdown. Now, DFT levels that you need to think of, DFT level 0, 1, and 2, right? So in simple terms, DFT level 0 will be at abstract level, right? You will not be thinking of in detail. Level 1, you can think of a little bit of detail. Level 2 is the detail level that you have, right? So level 0 will be the abstract level, and level 1 will be in the middle of 0 and 1. So if you consider the 0 as the abstract and the 2 as the detail, so it will be sitting somewhere between 0 and 2, so that you can uh, think of adding little details more than 0, but it will be less than 2. Right. Now, that's about the theoretical part of it. So if you have questions, do not hesitate to ask questions and unmute yourself and then ask. So I'll be trying to move to the practicals. Until I'm doing that, you can ask questions. So we'll be doing practicals and then we'll be coming back to the discussion, right? If you have questions, please ask. Unmute yourself and then ask. I think you don't have much questions, right? Okay, now I'll again go back to what I was supposed to discuss. Now, this is the page where Microsoft has published for us to refer, right? Now, this is the refine process now. We actually went to a level of very abstract just to understand it. Now, you can think of 5 major steps, right? So they actually have highlighted. First, you need to define your security requirements. So this is going to be a discussion thing. You are working in an organization, you can have a meeting and think of what level of security that you are expecting, right? You can invite people and then ask them their thoughts towards security. So software people will comment on the same, managers will comment on their aspect, admins will comment on their aspect, and so on. So that is about defining your security requirements. And of course, your customer is the important party. Customer will ask for certain specific security requirements as well. Now they'll be asking you to implement multiple authentication, right? I think you have heard multiple authentication. If you are developing an application, there are different methods of authenticating. You can think of OTP, you can think of like usernames and password, you can think of fingerprint, you can think of a method like face recognition, right? So those are specific requirements in some cases to the customer. So you have to think of okay, I think for some reason I seems to be going out of the spaces. But don't worry, I'll be giving you the recorded session. Definitely, I'll be able to give you the recorded session for your references. Anyway, what we need to deal is actually about thinking of the process. So you first need to think of security requirements, and then you need to think of creating an application so that your application is not going to be in problem, and then identify threats and the then the mitigation part of it. Right. Fine. Then the tool seems to be not difficult for you. So how you can download is you can go to the Microsoft website and they have given you plenty of links to download. So I will give you this link. You can find the link in chat. If you don't have the tool downloaded, just go to the chat and then I will just put it to everyone. Yes, the link is there. Just copy and paste it on your browser and try to browse it and then to download the tool. So if you need any help, you can talk to me so that I'll help you out. You don't have to read anything, just forget about reading it and go to the link, download Threat Modeling tool, and then you will be able to download it. So it will be an application like, it will not be a huge application to download in a huge size of KB, a large size of KB. So just download it and you can install it, right? You can install it. Once you have installed it, what you can do is you can open it and see, right? Just try to open it and see. So you have the lab document given. At the same time, go to Moodle and download the lab document as well. I think we've almost discussed many of the theoretical part of it. Now we'll do practicals, right? If you need more time, I'll give you like 2-3 minutes to get it downloaded. I'll be waiting here until you get prepared, right? So we'll be giving you like 2-3 minutes. Go to the Microsoft website and get it downloaded. Then we can actually revisit and start the practical. Spend 2-3 minutes to download. And there can be cases where your installation is giving you errors, right? So I might not be able to troubleshoot them since there is a crowd here. But I'll give you my contacts, right? At the end of this session, you can contact me and get the support because I am not from Microsoft. I'll try my best to help you out so that you can smoothly get the installation done. Now, can you raise your hand if you have the tool installed? I need to see whether all of us can do practicals or not. Please raise your hand. You have the raise hand option here. If you have installed the tool, then it's ready with you. Yes. Okay, one is there. Others can take time. Without having the tool, the session is not going to be helpful. Two, there are 2 students who have tools with them. Not ready. No worries, take your time. Nisanaga, don't worry, take your time. I'll be waiting for all of you, right? I'm not going to waste any of your time. You can actually talk to me in some cases if you are having troubles in installing. You unmute and talk to me so that I'll help. I'll be waiting until you raise your hand. Yes, no problem, Harshini. You can use 2016, but if you can find the latest version, that is fine. So the exact version that I am referring, 7.3. If you don't have 7.3 for the moment, that's fine. You can deal with the version that you have. Later on, you can update the version and then can try it out. The difference will be this one. Now, whenever you open the tool, there are different templates for models, right? So there are a few models in this version. Azure Threat Modeling. I'm not going to teach you the Azure Threat Modeling since this is nothing related to Azure. What we are focusing is called SDLTM knowledge base. If you have SDLTM knowledge base, that is fine. There is an added one. It's going to be a community contributed version for that. Medical device model that will also not be considered here, right? You only will have to have SDLTM knowledge. Take your time. Then fine, Harshini. Yes. Good. You can continue with this. So I'll be starting the session after after 4 minutes, right? It's like we'll allow you to install. Okay, Athanayaka, there's an error message, right? Yes, Athanayaka, you can paste the error message over here so that I can have a look and see. Just try to copy and paste the error message if it is possible. Uh, Sometimes there will be issues related to the .NET version you have. Try to paste it over here. If you're unable to fix it for the moment, you can contact me after the session. Then I'll help you out. Try to reinstall it, Athanayaka. If the error seems to be related to a .NET version or something, you will not be able to fix it at the time. You might have to install the .NET versions and all, like prerequisites to run this. If not, like you can at least look at the session and try to get the understanding, right? So I'll be waiting for another 4 minutes. Try your best. Yes, I went through the error. That is nothing related to what do you call the platform compatibility. It seems to be a problem with your firewall rules in some cases. But as advice, what I can give you, Athanayaka, you can try to remove the firewall rules. In simple terms, you can try to disable the firewall. Else think of your firewall rules might be managed by antivirus tool. Try to disable it for a while and retry downloading. If your internet connection seems to be working fine, that might be the reason. The reason seems to be a connectivity problem to Microsoft servers from your machine. Right? So application download did not succeed, your network connection or contact your system admin or network service provider might be a blocker to connect your system to Microsoft server. So I am hypothetically saying, try to unblock your firewall and then to connect. Once you have finished installation, please raise your hand. I am actually trying to wait for you. If you have few students installed, try everyone. I will wait for few more minutes. Fine, that seems few of you have completed the installation. Okay, right now you try your installations. We will start the practical session. Since the time is something that we need to consider as a factor. But anyway, if you find any difficulties, so I'll give you the contact so that you can ask me to help you out. I'll try my best to help you. Since like you can write an email or try to contact me in installation related matters. Fine. Right now we'll proceed with the practical. I'll be sharing my screen so that you can see it clearly. Right. This is what you get, right? Just check whether the same appears or might be little different in your case. There are two things that you need to focus on. One is about threat modeling and the template. So forget about the template for now, but in future cases, you can think of your own stencils or your own thread types. You also can create your own templates. And once you have created a template, you can open it and apply to your drawings as well. Now, this is going to be sort of a drawing mechanism, sort of a tool that it helps us to draw a DFT and to evaluate. So you should understand that the tool can't help you to fix it, right? Tool only can to help you to find faults of your design related methods, right? Now, what you can do is, if you are in this window, you can check whether you have selected the appropriate template for that. The current template that we should be having is called SDLT and the lightweight. Versioning might be differ in your case. Based on that, the stencils might also be little different, right? Okay, now create a model. Hit the button, create a model. Now it will open this window for you. I will be having a canvas, like what you can see over here. Uh, it will have a default name called diagram1, and you'll be seeing a sort of a typical window like what you have in Windows environment. And special stuff to look at is actually what you have in your stencils, right? I'll be focusing on them as well. These are the stencils that I have. And there's the message area, and there are a few classifications, or there are a few columns given. Description is there, severity is there, the diagram is there, and there's another column called ignore, right? Now, what you can do is, if you want to open a new one, like in any application, you can go for a new model. If you want to open what is existing, you can go for opening as well, right? To apply a template existing, you can apply the template. Now, once you have completed drawing, you can go for reports, right? Now, until you complete the drawing, the reporting functionality will be disabled. Once you have completed drawing and saved it in your machine, you can go for generating reports, and then you can start the discussion. That's how we are going to do it, right? Now we'll look at the practical part of it. Now, just to go through the stencils. Now, in your case, you will be focusing on generic processes, right? So you can think of a generic process. Under that, you have different types of processes, right? If you are developing an application related to OS process, you can select the appropriate. If not, you can just select what is relevant to you, right? Make sure to select the relevant, otherwise you will be in a trouble, right? That system or that tool will be giving irrelevant vulnerabilities to your requirement, right? If you are not very sure about what process to put, for the moment you can ask from me. Else you can talk to a professional who is in the specific domain, or else you can refer to the documentation of threat modeling and try to clarify the exact process which you want. Right. Now the first one is the OS process. If you are relating to something in the Windows process of OS or OS of Windows, you can select that. And then the thread and the kernel threads, native threads, and there are plenty of. And if you are planning to go for a thick client, select the thick client. If you are going to go for a managed application, go for managed application. Browser client, yeah, the browsers like Firefox, Chrome, for that you can select the browser client. It's like you will be connecting to a browser. It's like might be a small application, a web application that you are going to connect to a browser client. So for that you can select the browser client. If you want to go for a ActiveX plugin related methods testing, then you can go for browser with ActiveX plugin. And if you are planning to have a process like a web server, you can select a web server, right? And I'm not going to cover Windows specific stuff, since there can be people who are not working towards Windows much, like me even. So I'm not actually having a background of dealing with Windows related development. So we used to deal with Java. Like many cases, we in our country, we don't have people much who are dealing only with .NET environments. We have people in other domains. You can think of your specific areas and select the appropriate process. And virtual machine, if you are going to plan for a VM, you can select a VM as your process. That's about the generic processes. And then we have something called generic external interactor, right? So you have browsers as an external interactor. Keep that in mind. This is not going to be a process. If you want to keep a browser as an external interactor, then you can keep this one. Then authorization service, if you are going to attach, you can use that. If you have an external web app, you can use that. Let's say you are going to deal with a human user, you can use the human user feature. And if you have messaging services or runtimes, you can deal them as an external interactor. But these are not processes. We know the difference between an external entity and a process, right? So the same meaning is there. Now then the generic data stores, you are going to store data somewhere, like I told you. You can think of a cloud storage, right? So your cloud storage might be Azure Cloud, right? Your cloud storage might be AWS S3, right? Else you can think of a Firebase, right? But specific stuff related to AWS or Firebase won't be here. Generally speaking, the stuff related to any cloud storage related matters being covered. And SQL databases, if your data store is going to be a SQL database, you can select that. Non-relational databases, file systems, right? So you can think of a typical file system, registry hive, config file, right? So your config file might be XML. You can select a config file. Your caches, right? This represents a local data cache. I think people from academic might not have dealt with cache much. Just try to understand. Caching is sort of a temporary storage where we are going to apply it for applications, right? So we might be having a requirement to keep data for a period of time. So sometimes to enhance the performances. So it's like caching is not going to use as a permanent storage, but to increase the performances we use it, might be an application cache. HTML file local storage, cookies or devices. So cookies in the sense, especially the academics might not be able to differentiate what is a cookie and a session in some cases. This is going to be a concept. Cookie is going to be sort of a text file where it's going to store in a machine, right? Whenever you have a website, there should be a mechanism to identify a user, right? Let's say I'm a person who is going to visit a website called X, and that particular website should find a way to identify that I am the one who is connecting to the website, like I am the one who is interacting for a period of time. Now the mapping actually happens between sessions and cookies. Cookies are going to be reside at your computer. Session is going to be reside at your server, right? Or in your system. So cookie to session, there is a mapping, right? I think that is clear. Right, then devices. Yes, a device like a local storage. Those are about generic data store. So these are going to be the places where we are going to store data. Right now, if you have questions, you can raise your hand and ask. I just explained generic processes, generic external interactors, and generic data stores. If you are not clear, anyone can ask questions. Fine, I'll go ahead then. Now the data flows, we have HTTP data flows. HTTP data flow is actually not something secure. You can just select it and then can drag it. So your stuff like your different components will be connected through this channel. Then HTTPS is something secured, right? I'll explain it further. Right? So instead of having HTTP, you can think of HTTPS later. Binary, yes, it's a binary data flow. If you are dealing with binary data, that can be IPsec. You must have heard if you are a person who is working with this service providers or network domain, IPsec is a connectivity link that we can get. Name file, yes, it's another sort of a data flow. You can select if it is appropriate. SMB is again, there are different versions like SMB1 or SMB2. If it is really required, you can go for that. RPC, remote procedure calls, right? If you are going to connect to a distributed COM object, so you can go for that, RBC or DCOM. ALPC, local procedure call data flow. if you are going to call a procedure locally, you can use that. UDP, UDP is actually a protocol student. Specifically, if you are looking for media streaming, let's say you have a solution where you need to go for media streaming, you can use UDP as a connection link. So the related issues of UDP will be highlighted. And LOCTL interfaces, these are actually communication device drivers. So don't worry about them much. And then the important part is these different types of boundaries. Now there are different boundaries, internet trust boundary, machine trust, and so on. You can put and see. We'll try to see the difference. Generic trust boundary will like, it will be drawing sort of a square, sort of a box kind of thing in dotted, dotted connectivities or dotted line. It will cover a area through the generic trust boundary. Right? Now open the given lab sheet and read it carefully. You have this in Moodle. If you don't have, please ask question. Open and read it. Now, I think I've explained everything to you. And but what I didn't explain is this STRID, right? Keep that in mind. I did not explain what is STRID for the moment. We'll do the practicals and we'll go back and learning it. So this is going to be sort of a reverse way of learning. Right? So I know that some of you will be having assignments and activities, but until we complete this session, try to enjoy it. If you do not enjoy what I'm doing today, you will not be able to go through the recording and to get it at once, right? And make sure to ask questions. If this is not that interesting, you still can comment on this so that I'll try my best to make it interesting for all of you, right? Fine. Now, I'm not going to explain everything like it's going to be boring for you. Now, what I want you to look at is actually the stencils pane. I think I could bring you through the stencils pane a bit. So these were the stencils pane. And try to use few of them and drag and drop into your canvas. And right click on the drawing surface and then bring context menu that allows you to add a generic element for each stencils category. You can select generic elements. To add data flow between different selected objects, you can just click, maybe right click on the drawing surface and connecting. You can just connect it, will be a single direction connection. Else you can have bidirectional connection. So if it is required only, you should put the bidirectional. Right? And this is an example given. So you also can try it, right? So there are two web services connected, right? So web application and web service, right? So you might not know the difference between a web service and a web application for the moment. Now I'll try to explain it what actually it is, right? So a web application will be having a logic where you have written things in Java, might be in .NET. That is something related to that. Let's say like to do a shopping cart kind of thing, right? You go to website and order stuff. That will be managed by web application. Now a web service will be something different, right? So web service will be to get external service. So you'll be having a requirement to talk to external service to get something into your application, right? Let's say for some reason you need to do a payment, right? So you should talk to a payment gateway and get the return. So that will be a web service. So your application will be there and your web service will be there. You should be having an interconnectivity. So for that, I have given you a nice connection, right? But don't trust me. This is not be the nicest. I just have given the nice one, but just to find faults of this, right? I just gave you a design. Now, if you try to look at the design and understand, you shouldn't be in a hurry to draw this. First, try to understand the story, and then we have enough time to draw it, right? So drawing is not the job here. Understanding the concept and the analogy that we have, the analytical way of thinking is much more important. So if we are unable to cover it within the day, I'll be adding some additional session for you to cover it. So this is going to be interesting, right? Trust me. Now, web application will be a website where you are going to visit the website and you are going to put an order. So then web application will keep your order, but at a point you have to pay. So credit card data should be submitted, your personal information should be submitted. Now website will be sort of a merchant application. You can get plenty of applications if you are staying at home or working from home. You might be ordering plenty of stuff, right? So specifically, like, so we don't know. I'm not pretty sure about men, right? But I'm sure that ladies are ordering stuff, right? Usually ladies order stuff. If you don't agree with me, so I don't think that will happen. In days like these, we usually order stuff, right? You will be ordering your specific stuff. I won't be naming them. So then your orders will be going to the merchant app. Then it will try to put whatever your taste. You'll be selecting items. Now assume that they are in the shopping cart. Now you are at the checkout page. You are going to pay for that. You have to use your credit card, else you have to talk to a intermediate service provider like a PayPal. So can be anything. So you'll be putting your credit card details and all. So then your web application talk to the web service. That is what the exact business case, right? Academic people, if you don't understand it, make sure to ask enough questions and understand the concept. Now, web application is one thing that is going to collect users' data. So now I'm going to relate it to the human user. And now you can tell that whether I did it right or I did it wrong, right? So a human user connect to a web application through HTTP? You can think of it, right? So I'm not going to give you an answer for that. Now you can think of the way that it has connected. We know that anyway, any human user can directly connect to a system, but we know that through a browser, a person can connect, right? So then it's going to be a HTTP connectivity, right? And from the web application to the web service, there can be another connectivity. So you can think there's another requirement. The web service has connected to a SQL database. Right, web service seems to be connecting to the external database, and the database, the query returns. We know that we use write queries, right? The structured language or structured query language. We use write queries and then run on top of the DB instance, and then get the return back to the web service. Right now, if you are a technical person, this is going to be a synchronous design, right? Synchronous code. Now, synchronous in technical terms, if a system is going to depend on someone else, that is called synchronous. If a system is not going to depend on the others, this is called asynchronous, right? To understand the difference between synchronous and asynchronous, synchronous system will depend. So it has a dependency between the different calls. Now, if you look at the diagram carefully, the user will send a request to web application. Now, web application will forward the request to web service. It will try to call the database and get the return, and the web service will get the return to web application and then to the user. Now, we'll try to understand the time it takes, right? Now, the time it takes to get the request from the user to app is counted. Now, the processing time of web application is counted. And then the time it takes to forward the request to web service is counted at the last the level. SQL query execution is also has to be counted. Now the return will be added, right? So this is the disadvantage of any synchronous application. So the time it takes to give a response to the user might be days. User response, right? But actually we can't do that. If you are a technical expert, we have to deal it in like maybe seconds or maybe in minutes. You can't ask your user to wait until the person get your order. If somebody has ordered a sari, then the person definitely will not be stayed 4 days, right? So we can go shop and order it. Now we'll try to look at the trust boundary we have. So you can think that I've added the trust boundary, CopeNet trust boundary. So, and additionally, I have indicated something called internet boundary. Internet boundary in the sense that the web application and the web service is going to be connected through internet. Now, internet is a public network, right? We don't know who is going to be there, right? Internet is a public network, and we know that even though you have connected, so there can be an attacker who's going to steal your data. So internet boundary has been added just to indicate that these two services, or the web application and the web service, is going to be connected through public internet. And we don't know that the other one, yes, of course. Oh, web service and the database, again, yeah, this is very it's not going to be a common case. Just to understand, hypothetically added, again going to be connected to internet. But in some cases, web service and the SQL database might be connected to your between to the local network. Now try to draw the diagram and then see, right? I'll be drawing it. Might be a bit differ. You also can try it the way that I'm trying. Now open the diagram tool, right? Then go through these generic processes. What we need is actually the stuff that we have. This is going to be a web application. Now go through the list of processes and drag and drop a web application. Yes, I have it. And then I need a web service. Yes, I do have web service. And yes, I can have a human user, right? So for the moment, you can think of a browser if you really want, right? So uh, you can go through the external connectivities, external entities. You can think of a browser. Yes, you can think of a human user. Since I already have a human user, I will be placing a browser over there. I just wanted to do a difference so that you also can think out of the box a bit. And then I might need a database as well, right? So I can go for data stores. I'll be going for yes, yes. I think you might have gone through SQL databases enough. So I'll be going for a non-relational database. Might be a document database, right? You might have heard these document databases, but I'm assuming that I don't want to have a relational database like in a typical case. So I have changed a bit. So non-relational database. Now we'll try to draw part of the diagram and try to see what problems that might be there. Now we can try to find connectivity. So I'll be referring to HTTP connections. I'm going to find HTTP connections. A browser is going to send a request to the web app. Just prevent it over there. So this is going to be the request, right? Take your time. First, I would request you to look at the screen, follow it. Then I'll give you the time to draw, right? So it will sometimes in some cases, if you try to do the parallel job, then it will be not that fruitful for you. Look at it and then do it. So I'll give you enough time to do, right? Don't worry. First look at what I'm doing and then spend time on doing it. And then another connection line from the application to the web service. These are still the requests, not the responses. And then I kept it over here. Now we know that we need to give responses. Here, the web service will give a response to the web app. And again, the return, the browser has to get a return from web application. Yes. Yeah, I think we have completed up to a level. Now you can do till this level, right? I'll go with you. You can do till this level and then let me know. Raise your hand once you have completed up to this level. Then we'll go. At the same time, if you have difficulties, please unmute and talk, else you can type. I think few of you have come to the level that you wanted. We have only 3, if I'm not mistaken. I'll wait for a few minutes and okay, I have 4 students who have come up to this level. Disanaika, could you install the system and try to do this? Or else you're having any difficulties? I'm just going through the name list. Okay. Pereira, could you try to do this or are you in any issue? Yes, if any of you are having questions, please unmute and ask. I'll wait for like 2 minutes till you come to this level. Right, fine. We'll go ahead. Now, if you go back to the diagramming that we have, please open it up, and then we can see that there are a few connectors given. But you can think of some more appropriate connections. What we have currently used is like ALPC, right? So we can think of some additional appropriate connections if you are putting into the same place. For the moment, we'll be using the ALPC as well now. If you look at it like what we have ALPC, right? And of course, we have like UDP. And these are the connectivities which we have. Usually, we don't connect to the system through a binary connectivity. We can try out ALPC and see what happens. The requirement might be just to give you the requirement might be to clarify it through remote procedure flooring. This might be the query request, and this might be to get the query response. Fine. Now we look at the diagram how they have placed this like the internet boundary, but I'll not be putting the internet boundary here, right? So that I used to place it just to give you an understanding if the web service and the database connect through internet to learn it. But I am looking in a practical aspect for the moment. You can put an internet boundary through these two stuff, like from the browser to web app and from the browser to web service. and can try to understand what are the problems which we find. Now open this and go to internet boundary and can drag it and drop. We'll put it and try to find out the problems which we might arrive, right? Okay, now put it over there and can put another boundary over there as well. Now we have connected uh, 4 component, browser to web app, web app to web service, and to a non-relational database, right? Okay, now how are we going to do that? Is like make sure to save the diagram. So I'll be saving the diagram. Uh, Fine, I'll save the diagram. And you have different ways of identifying the issues, right? So how to find it out is like you can go for the support. Right here, you have the ways of getting the report, right? And then also you can think of like finding the issues and then later on fixing them. But before going to report, go to view, and there is we were in the design view, right? By default, we were in the design view. We can go to the analysis view. Now just click on view and then go to the analysis view. Then you will be given a listed item and can go through them and try to find out what we have right now. Right now will be, I think in my case, I have 40 issues, right? In your case, it will be differ. And don't worry and don't be confused if the diagram seems to be given the same number of issues in your case. So the database that you have in your version might be differ to the database that I have in my case, right? Don't worry. But if you think of a way that we need to understand it, roughly you should be having similar sort of issues related to HTTP in both of the cases, right? Let's say for some reason, if my system has identified tampering, you should also be having tampering in your system. Okay, right. Now we look at what we have here. Now it seems to be giving everything related to the diagram one. Yeah, that's the only diagram which we have. Now the titling that they have given, spoofing. Whenever you are clicking on that, it will highlight the areas that you need to focus, right? I am clicking on the first one. Browser to web application, spoofing the browser external entity, right? Spoofing the browser external entity seems to be the title given, right? Now, let's say you don't understand this, right? You might not be able to understand this unless you are a technical person who has worked in web development. Even though you are a web developer, still you are not aware of it since you are not a security expert. Right now, what you can do is you can read it. Spoofing the browser external entity is the given title. Right. Now there are categories. I didn't teach you the strIDE. Now this is going to be under the category of spoofing. Right. This is going to be under the category of spoofing. Read the description will help you to understand to a level. Now it says that browser may be spoofed by an attacker, and this may be this may be lead to unauthorized access to web application. Consider using standard authentication mechanisms to identify the external entity. Now this is something related to authentication, right? Now interaction seems to be going through HTTP and they have given that the priority is high. So you have to find a fix. Now how to find a fix? How to find a fix is the problem which you have. Now the system has given you a problem or the issue part of it. Fixing is the problem. In some cases, you might not be the expert, but if you are the expert, what you can do is you can give a justification, right? Now, browser may be spoofed by an attacker and this may be led to unauthorized access. Now, let's say you are going to give multi-factor authentication. I'm going to give you a justification. Enable multi-factor authentication to the solution. I'm not going to tell you how to do that. Right. Now, this is just a justification given since the person, assuming me, is having the expertise to fix this. If you don't have the expertise, you can't give a justification. You always have to go, you have to go to the expert in the particular domain and get the recommendation and put it, and then mark it as mitigated, right? Now, how to fix the issues is the process that you have to follow. Now, you just draw the diagram, and then you went to the analyzing part of it, or you went to analysis view, and then go to the set properties, and you try to understand it. If you understand it and you have justification in hand, you can put it, and then you can put, or you can mark it to mitigated. Now, in my case, I am going to put it as mitigated, right? And since I have given a justification for the same. Now, again, there are plenty of others, right? Cross-site scripting is there, elevation using impersonation. So this is another type of attack. I'll be explaining these issues in detail. Might not be today. I'm trying to arrange another session for all of you so that each and every issue will be discussed in detail. So don't worry. If you are an academic person, so you will feel like this is something great, don't worry. So I'm going to help you out. Even though you are professionals who don't understand the concepts, still I'll be there for you to help. And for the moment, try to understand the process of it. Now, since I have a person who is capable of giving me a justification, I'll fix that and then I may place it as mitigated. Now we'll go for cross-site scripting. This is not the ideal solution that I'm proposing, but try to understand the way to fix it. Now, maybe some members in your security team has decided to not to fix it. So then how to do it? How to remove it from the list? And now let's say you can put it like not applicable. We know that even though you have vulnerability scans in your organizations, all of the issues are not going to be fixed for some reason. Might be due to incompatible issues, might be due to certain problems that might arise in future, right? So for them, we are going to put them like not applicable, right? Yeah, I have selected the second issue as not applicable, so I'm not going to fix it, and that seems to be removed from the list itself. Now the third one, elevation of privilege. Now I am going to fix is I don't have the expertise. Let's say I don't have the expertise, but I am putting it like needs investigation. Needs investigation, right? So I am going to put it like needs investigation. Whenever the investigation has completed, I'll be putting a justification. Then I will mark it like mitigate. Now, the way that you are going to maintain the diagrams is this. So you are going to do the drawing, and then you are going to find the number of threads, and then you are going to put the justification and the status. You can change the status as you wish, right? I have fixed some of them, right? Earlier I had like 40 issues. Now, like, oh, okay, you can introduce new fixes as well. Now, for some reason, if you feel like this HTTP is not going to work, you can delete that and can put HTTPS as well. Now, as a fix, I'll be deleting them, right? I'll be deleting this line. Look at it carefully. So I found that several issues are occurring due to this HTTP connectivity. I feel like I need to have HTTPS, right? Now for issues like spoofing of source data, right? So and potential vulnerability related to just HTTP can be fixed by having HTTP secured layer. So I'll be removing them. Now, what you can do is like you can keep the versioning. So for the practical, I'll be deleting them. Sorry, I'll be removing this link, and then we'll introduce HTTPS. And now you can see that whenever I was deleting, some of the issues seems to be disappearing. Yeah, it's been disappeared. Yes. Now what I can do is I can introduce, I have to go to the design view, make sure to save them. I have to go to the design view and then apply HTTPS over there, right? I found that HTTP is not going to sort out the problem. I'm going to go to the connectivity or the data flows. I'm going to put HTTPS. Yes, we'll think about how to implement HTTPS later, but for the moment, I've just placed HTTPS to connect these two devices. Sorry, to connect these two services. Yeah, that seems to be okay. Now I can rethink of going to the analysis view. Right now it seems to be like different number of issues being raised, right? Now there are a few issues, but some of the issues which were there seem to be vanished. And now there are additional things that need to think of, right? So web application may subject to elevation of privilege and elevation by change in the execution flow. So this is what we have to consider. So the process is actually the way that I just explained. You first draw it and try to go through the issues and then try to fix them by introducing it. Yes, so you can complete the practical uh, in the way that I explained. Then what you can do is, let's say if you want to have reports, now go to reports and click on create full report. It will open a window like this or similar to this one. Then click on generating report. You can save it. Right? So I'll be uh, saving it like report underscore 01. Right. So this is going to be a form of HTML. Now you can think of a report. Now it gives us a indication. Set model summary. Not started. There are like 33 issues, even though we haven't started. Not applicable one, niche mitigation one, mitigation implemented one. So we only have implemented for one. Total seems to be 33. Somehow we like we seem to be handling only 3. So uh, nothing has migrated. We have the diagram and then the interaction have specifically given. Now this report will help you to read and understand some of the mitigations given and also the issues being identified, right? Now make sure to save them like you used to maintain versions of different documents. Now if you have designed today and then make sure to keep this one as a version, let's say as a best practice, I would recommend you to keep a version. I'll be putting it like p underscore 1.0. Right now, this is my first version. I'll save it in the same folder. Now, report can also be saved in the same way. Whenever you generated the report, you also can keep it under a version and keep it like what we did for the diagram. I think that the process is clear to you. If you have questions or queries, we have like 5 more minutes to ask. You can ask your questions now. Yes, was this clear to you today? I'm not pretty sure about the understanding. So understanding might be differ from person to person. But in general, if you have questions, you can ask. Yes, few people who did practicals, I'll ask from them, not like ignoring others. Isanayaka, could you do the practical and could you get the result? Yes, right. Thank you very much, Isanayaka. And uh, uh, I am sorry, I don't know whether Miss or Mrs. Silva, could you complete it? Or Mr.? Sorry, actually, I don't know your first name. Sorry about it. I only could read your uh, last name part of it, just referring to the name itself. Yes. Silva, could you do that? Hasant, was the session helpful for you? Right. Thank you, Silva. Sorry, actually, I don't know your name. I know that there should be a nice name in front of what is Silva. So for the moment, I was just trying to talk to you from the name that it said. Right, Hassan has done it, right? Okay, thank you very much for the feedback. Yes, Harshani, could you do that?
Yes, sir.
Okay, right. Could you manage the practicals as it is, or you found any difficulties?
No, sir, no problems.
Okay, thank you very much. Yes, just picking another random name. Karunarathi, could you do this? Can you hear me? Okay, right. Thank
Yes,
you very much for the feedback. Okay, good. Few others, yes. Javikram, you could do that. That's really good. Javikram, could you do that? Okay, fine. I believe that many of you could do it. So then I will be spending 3 more minutes for you to understand the rest of it. So yeah, I have few things just to summarize before winding up the session for the day. We'll bring you through them very quickly so that the time won't be wasted, right? Yes. So this is what I have. I think I'll be able to uh, remind the same in another session, probably on coming week. So we actually focused on threat modeling. So I'll be explaining the same. And this is the simplest process that you can think of, right? So you don't have to worry about the process for the moment. It's like you're going to define it, like you're going to define and then you're going to diagram it and you can identify issues and then to migrate, mitigate it, and then you revalidate it. And if you still have issues, then you are going to go to the process of defining it and go through the same steps. And in simple terms, what you need to understand about Microsoft threat modeling. So it's sort of a core element of Microsoft security development lifecycle. In simple terms, that is called SDL. But that is not just software development lifecycle. That's about security development lifecycle. And it's an engineering technique. So I didn't tell that. It's going to be an engineering technique where you can use to help you in identifying threats, attacks, or vulnerabilities. In simple terms, threat, attack, vulnerability is having a difference, but I'll be explaining in next week. So the difference between threat and attack and also vulnerability. But for the moment, keep that. These are not going to be done by the people who are like engineers and all. So these are going to be done by attackers like hackers. Right, and countermeasures that could affect your application. So you can think of them as well. So you can apply the civil development life cycle. So if you are a worker, if you are an employee who is in the domain of software development or else you are an academic, you can think of learning threat modeling and you can think of teaching threat modeling to your students. And you can highlight the importance why whatever we do today has an impact to a project, right? So even though that is theoretical or a theoretical part that you're covering, one will learn it and will apply tomorrow, right? For a person like a student, maybe your student, right? Or from any perception, if you are a practitioner, but you can apply it in your organization, right? If you are an employee who is working in software development, you can think of applying it so that you can get the benefit. So your company is going to get the benefit to reduce the risk or to cut the cost. And 5 major models modeling steps. You should define your security requirement. You can have meetings with other professionals in the domain and then create that application diagramming, identify the threats, mitigating it and validating it. And specifically, these tools being defined for developers and software architects. I'll be explaining more in next session. I have my contacts here, so you can use these contacts to contact me so that I'll be replying to your emails and all. If you have questions, you can ask on the questions. Right. Okay, then I'll be winding down the session for today. Thank you very much for joining. And if you have questions, do not hesitate to ask me. And then thank you again. Have a good day, student.